So here we are going to see OTC derivative instrument. So we'll be seeing the OTC derivative instrument. So what is OTC? OTC is over the counter, right? It's over the counter market. So in this case, we'll be seeing on concept of cap, floor, and collar. Cap, floor, and collar, and we'll be seeing on interest rate swaps. Cap, floor, and collar, and interest rate swap. So now we talk about the interest rate swap, right? First thing we should know what is the cap, right? So cap is option type derivative. It is an option type derivatives. So in derivatives we have seen the call option, put option, right? In a similar way, cap is also a type of derivative, and it is a type of option which is traded over the counter, traded over the counter, right? And not traded in exchange. It is not traded in exchange. So it is type of an option contract, right? It is a type of option contract which is dealt in OTC. Now why I require of cap? What is the requirement of cap, right? So that is the question first comes to our mind. Suppose, say, assume that you require money, right? And you require money, and you're going to borrow some money. So this is you, and you require some money, so you are borrowing money. So normally whenever you borrow money, you have to pay the price for the money, which is interest rate, right? So the interest rate could be a fixed interest rate, or it could be floating interest rate. So we, in terms of the international finance, we term it as fixed rate of interest or floating rate of interest, right? So it could be the fixed rate or the floating rate, fixed rate or floating rate. So in this case we have to take the floating rate. Suppose you are borrowing the money, okay, and the basis is that on what basis you are borrowing the money? On the basis of floating rate you are borrowing money, right? In that case, what you will be doing, you will be also buying the cap. Similar way, there are two people involved, okay? There is a buyer of a cap, buyer of a cap, right? Then there will be a seller of a cap, right? So buyer of an option, seller of an option, similar to the call and put, right? So you are buying a cap and there is a selling a cap. So when you buy an option, normally we normally pay the premium to the broker, right? In a similar way, when you buy a cap, you have to pay the commission or premium to the seller of the cap. So you have to pay the commission or premium to the seller of the cap. So in this case, the interest rate, right? Normally you will be buying the interest rate. Suppose you find the floating rate is an interest, right? And suppose the interest rate is unfavorable to you, then you enter into the contract called cap, right? And the loss from the interest rate that you bear is compensated by the seller of the cap. Loss will be compensated by the seller of the cap. So now find it a bit vague enough, right? Let us get into a simple example. Suppose, say, there is a company called X Limited. There is a company called X Limited, and it is borrowing money from the market, right? It is borrowing money from the market at, say, floating rate. Suppose the floating rate in the market we have, say, MIBOR plus 0.50. So in this case, MIBOR is your Mumbai Interbank offered rate, right? It is your Mumbai Interbank, Mumbai Interbank offered rate. So this is the floating rate which is available in the market plus the 50 basis points. So this is your BPS, basis point. So X Limited is a company which is borrowing the money at on the basis of floating rate, which is MIBOR plus 0.50. Along with borrowing of money, the company is also purchasing an option type derivative, which is cap. So it is also buying a cap. So it is also buying cap along with the this, right? So it also buying a cap. So now we come to this situation right now. Suppose this is situation 1. Suppose we have the MIBOR. Suppose the MIBOR is having a rate of say 8%. So when you borrow the money, suppose MIBOR is having 8% is the rate, right? And you find that later the MIBOR increases to 9%. So when you borrow the money, the MIBOR rate was 8%, that is floating rate was 8%, and you find that as the day progresses, as the time passes, you find that the rate is increasing to 9%. In this case, what is happening over here? You are X Limited, you are the X Limited company. In this case, you have to pay 8% interest rate, right? In this case, you have to pay additional 1%, that is 9%. So you have, in this case, you have to pay the interest rate of additional 1%. So normally you are paying 8% is the interest rate normally, and you find that the market interest rate goes higher. So that is an additional burden that you have to pay 1% extra. This 1% extra is the cost for you. So this extra cost is the burden for X Limited company. So in this case, the extra cost has to be paid, right? So in this case, you are buying a cap, which is an option type contract to protect the risk. So this extra cost, okay, will be paid by the cap seller. Okay, so this is a loss which is compensated by the cap seller. So this 8% you'll be paying 8%, and this 1% will be compensated by the cap seller. So that is the purpose of buying. That is the purpose of the cap, right? So this is a very simple part, right? This extra cost. So this is an extra cost which is compensated by the cap seller. Suppose we have the situation 2. Suppose we have the MIBOR rate when you are borrowing, say it is at 8%. Suppose the MIBOR rate falls down in this, say it is falling down below 8%. So in this case, it is more benefit to you, right? You need not enter into contract with the cap seller. So in this case, the X Limited will not contract or will not enter into contract with the cap seller. Cap seller. So this is the concept of your cap. So next comes the concept called, so what is floor? It is also like the cap type derivative, right? And for whom it is applicable? It is useful for those who deposit or lend money. So this type of the derivative, the option derivative, is mostly used by the person who is depositing the money or who is lending the money. Suppose you are the investor, right? So now what you will be doing? Suppose, assume, say you are going to deposit the money in any of the instrument. Okay, so you're going to deposit the money, right? And you're depositing the money on the basis of floating rate, so which is nothing but MIBOR plus 50 basis point. So you have decided that you're going to deposit the money on floating rate basis, right? In a similar way, you will be buying the floor, and you have also bought the floor, which is the option type derivatives. All right, so you have deposited the money in the floating rate, which is MIBOR plus 0.50, and also you also purchase a contract, a derivative contract, the option type derivative contract, which is called floor, right? Now we come to the situation. So suppose the MIBOR rate is 8%. When you're depositing money, the MIBOR rate was 8%, right? And you find that after 3 to 4 days or after 1 week, you find that the MIBOR rate falls down to 6. So it means that you are depositing the money and you are having the intention that whatever the money you are going to put, you'll be getting 8% interest out of your investment. But you find that after 15 days, the floating rate, which is 8%, Mumbai Interbank offer rate, falls down to 6%. It means that you will be getting only 6% out of your investment. It means that you are bearing a loss of 2%, right? So you're bearing a loss of 2%. So this loss will be compensated. So this loss will be compensated by floor seller, right? So this loss will be compensated by the floor seller. So you are the floor buyer, so buyer of floor, and there will be one more person. So you are the buyer of the floor, one more person who may be a broker, who may be an intermediary. He will be seller of floor, right? So this is the part where the floor type of contract to be applied. Next, third one is called collar. We call it as collar. So collar is the combination of your cap plus floor. Right? Collar is a combination of your cap and floor. So in this case, the commission, normally we have to pay commission if you are going to purchase an option type derivative contract which is traded in OTC market, that is cap, buying a cap and buying a floor. Normally we have to pay the commission. In this case of collar, there is the commission. Normally what we pay a commission, or we say it as premium to the cap seller or floor seller. So in this case of the collar type of option contract, so you don't have to pay any commission or premium. In this case, you don't have to pay any commission to the broker, right? So in this case, what you will be doing is that you are the collar buyer, and one more person, we have the collar seller, collar buyer and collar seller. So collar buyer and collar seller. So in this case, the collar seller, okay, will be compensating the loss of the collar buyer, that is you. It is you, right? It is you. So he'll be compensating the loss of your change in interest rate. So normally the collar seller will be compensating the loss of collar buyer, that is you. So he'll be compensating the loss of your interest rate. If there is a change in interest rate, he'll be compensating the loss, right? In this case, there is no commission, but what you have to do is that, suppose you should have an agreement with him. So you are agreeing him to share a profit. Okay, suppose you want to gain from the change in the interest rate, okay, and you have to share a part of profit to him. The profit could be the agreement that you have in between the seller, right? So this is the part of the collar. So we'll just put a very simple example once again. We take the similar same example. Say you are the X Limited. Okay, it is your company, right? So you are the owner, right? So you are the company. Now you are X Limited, right? And you have decided that you will be borrowing a money. You borrow money at, say, floating rate, which is MIBOR plus 0.50, right? Mumbai Interbank offered rate plus the 50 basis point, which is the floating rate you have decided. So we come to the same situation. Suppose we have the MIBOR 8%, right? And suppose you find that after few months or few weeks, you find that the interest rate is going up, which is 10%, right? You are borrowing the money thinking that you'll be paying the interest only at 8%, but you find that you have to pay 10%, that is extra 2% that you have to pay. So you have to pay 8% is normally that you will be paying, then this extra 2%, right, that this is an extra 2% that you have to pay, which is a loss. So here in this case, the X Limited is suffering a loss, right? So this extra 2% will be compensated by collar seller. So it will be compensated by collar seller, right? We take another situation. Suppose the MIBOR rate is 8% when you borrow the money, and you find that after few months or few weeks, you find that the MIBOR rate comes down. So what will happen? So normally we have decided to pay the interest rate at 8%. Now you find that it is more favorable to us, right? Because we have to pay only the interest of 6%, not 8%. So 2% is the gain for you, right? That is X Limited. You are X Limited, so you're gaining 2%. So now from this 2% savings, okay, you have agreed to share the gain, a part of profit, right? So you have decided that the 50% of this savings or the profit that you get or the gain you get, you say that you will be sharing with the collar seller, which is 1% collar seller, right? So this is the agreement that you going to enter, that agreeing to share profit. So this is what, that when you're having a gain, when there is a change in interest rate and which is favorable to you, change in interest rate and it is favorable to you, and you have decided to have an agreement with the caller seller that you will be paying 1% from your gain, that whatever the gain you have. So this is the simple concept of the interest rate swaps.